So good afternoon, everyone. We are very happy to have you with us this afternoon. I'm Naiman, Global Communications Officer at Target Malaria. And today, this session of the Young Scientists webinar is hosting two guests from the USA and from Hungary. I'm delighted to have to host today Edward Agyarko. Sorry, Edward, you will get the opportunity to introduce your name. So Edward Agyarko from 100 Years of Malaria. He's a molecular biologist at the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Science. My other guest is Nana Banafo. Nana Banafo is a data scientist and also an author. He writes books, and he's also the founder of 100 Years of Malaria. I think Nana is connected from the US, and Edward maybe from Hungary. Sorry. So today we would like to discuss with you a theme that I think will interest our young scientists very dearly. Our theme today is how to be a successful scientist, and we aim here to get the chance to discuss tips to help you develop your career as a researcher. I'm also here today with my colleague, Lorraine. Lorraine, you want to say hi to our guest today?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I believe everyone knows me here, but in case you don't, my name is Lorraine Gibson, and I work with Ndeman in the global communications team at Target Malaria.
All right. So now I'm going to give the floor to our guests today so they can tell us more about themselves. So I'm going to start with Nana first. Nana, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate the collaboration between 100 Years of Malaria and Target Malaria. So my background is chemistry, biotechnology, and as previously said, I dabbled a lot in machine learning, data science, because I do believe is the future of science. I've worked as a scientist, bench scientist, as an engineer, as a clinical scientist, and now more of a leadership role in managing other scientists. I'm quite excited to share my experience and my journey with you all, and hopefully we all learn from each other today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana. And Edward, can you tell us more about your background?
All right. Yes. So my name is Edward Agyarko. I have a background in biological sciences and biotechnology from KNUST. I have worked for over 10 years as a lecturer in Ghana at the Family Health Medical School. And I'm currently working on lipidomics, specifically the effect of mycotoxins on lipid metabolism in various mammals. This is a great concern in food safety and of public health concern. So that's my current interest at the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Sciences. So I'm also excited to be here, excited to, share a few nuggets about the scientific journey with you all, and hoping to learn some things from you as well as we keep interacting with each other. So hope we have a great day together. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. So as a reminder, we've organized this webinar the following way. So we'll have a first exchange between our guest and I. And during the second half of the event, you will get the chance to either raise your hand and ask them questions, or you can also type in your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that you get the chance to get an answer. So we have 1 hour. So I propose that we kick start, and we will start very simply. So I would just like to ask you, Nana, for you, what is the definition of success for a scientist?
For me, it's not so much the definitions. Over the years, one of the things I've learned is what it takes to be successful scientists. And what it takes to be successful scientists is to have that intrinsic motivation on the thing that you're passionate about, and then building the tools around it. So you have to learn the skill and then execute. Science is a very difficult journey, but it's also very rewarding because you can see the end results of your work, how it impacts people around the world. So it's rather learning the tools of the trade and having that passion to continue working, and eventually you become successful.
Thank you. And what about you, Edward? What do you think of the question?
Right. Yeah. So we get into science, as we normally define it, is to study the unknown, get to know the things that are going on around us that we don't know about, get explanations for them and how they impact our lives. So to me, to be successful means that you're able to find certain answers, that the work that you do is able to impact society. You are able to solve problems through the kind of research that you do, through the kind of knowledge that you seek. If you're able to do this, then I think that you're getting somewhere. But like Nana indicated, it's more of an individual thing based on your personal values and what you hold dear in connection with the kind of questions that you seek. If you get on that journey and you find answers, you become pretty fulfilled. But ultimately, if your science makes impact in the society, then you're pretty successful.
Thank you. And that's very interesting what you just said. And I know that both of you worked in very different environments, especially Nana, who has a hand both in the research and academia, but also more in the corporate world. I know that success goes beyond technical expertise. Having worked in very different settings, Nana, what can you tell us about collaboration and teamwork, and how did they contribute to forging you today?
I think collaboration is an important part of becoming a scientist. For example, when you were an individual contributor, when I was working as a bench scientist, it was very easy to work alone. But when you shift into, let's say, a clinical scientist, for example, you absolutely have to collaborate, because as a clinical scientist, you rely on other scientists or science expertise like computer scientists, statisticians, regulatory scientists, policy scientists, what have you. So collaboration definitely helps you. Without collaboration, you would not get anywhere. Collaboration also shapes the way you look at a particular topic. You learn from other just by working with other people. So collaboration is definitely important, and it also makes you grow as a scientist.
Mm, thank you. And Edward, what would you like to say to our
Right.
general?
Science is rarely a solo act. I mean, if you go through history, most of the discoveries that were made, from DNA discovery, to a whole lot, you realize that multiple scientists had to come together. They either had to work together, or they had to receive criticisms and opinions from colleagues to shaping what it is that they thought about. So science has always been a teamwork, and if you want to go far in whatever field that you choose, you definitely have to collaborate. And when I talk about teamwork, I'm not just talking about the people that you work in the same lab with, or the people that you work on a day-to-day with. It even includes the reviewers that get to look at your manuscript. I mean, you have worked so hard, you have, put out a manuscript, you send it out there for publication, and the people who look at it, they look at it with a certain eyes that are quite diverse from what you initially thought. And so they bring on board certain ideas, they ask certain questions that will trigger you to think, even more. Now, talking about collaborations, I mean, as young scientists, you rarely have all the ideas, you rarely have all the funding, you rarely have all the equipment. So collaborating with colleagues, from other institutions, most of which may be even more well equipped than you, would help you to, expand the frontiers of science even better. So these things are quite important to the journey of science, I would say.
Yeah, sometimes it comes with the occasional challenge, because colleagues don't always go your way, but it's all very important to have that feedback. So I will ask maybe Lorraine to launch the first part of this webinar, because we have this tradition where we do also take this occasion to ask our attendees about questions that are linked to their daily work or daily life. So the first question that we have for you, young scientists, is: how often do you monitor your field of research for latest studies finding? It's also to make sure that they really stay on top of their game, whether it is in terms of research and publication. So please do participate in the poll, and we'll make sure to share the results later. Thank you, Edward. Edward, I'm going to stay with you for a moment. I know that you, as I said, you also work in very various environments. What can you tell us about the challenges that you encountered on your path as a student, but also as a researcher?
Right. Beginning my science journey in Ghana, the very obvious challenge has always been funding, the availability of the required funds, and then also the high-tech equipment, that makes the journey smoother. And this has been a challenge in the sense that sometimes you have very great ideas that you would like to look into, that you would like to research, but you put all the ideas down in the form of a work plan, in the form of a proposal. You get to work and you realize that you don't have all it takes. So under those circumstances, you would have to be very dynamic in modifying or altering the plan that you initially had without necessarily compromising on the quality of work that you try to do. So funding has always been a challenge, but like we mentioned earlier, because of collaboration and the ability to work with teams, you always find a way around it. Another challenge that often keeps coming up is having dissenting views or having contrary views from colleagues and then teammates. Sometimes they may come from your superiors, sometimes they may come from your colleagues or even people who are a little below you. And I would say that in science, because it's not a solo act, you would always have to learn to accommodate them. You would have to learn to listen carefully to what your colleagues are asking you about. I mean, instead of putting up this competitive approach, you welcome them, you listen carefully, and then you set up on a journey to find the answers together. And this is something that makes life, whether in the bench or in the lecture room or wherever you find yourself, even in the field, it makes it more interesting because you see that you discover more together. So while there may be challenges, but you can always, through finding solutions, even go higher in your science journey.
That's true. It's true that usually science is, scientific work really goes very long. It's a long race, it's a long run, and you want also to keep close your colleagues. Nana, do you have something to add to
Yes.
Edward's response?
Sure. Everything Ed said, but for me, one of the interesting challenges I had was when the results of my experiments was different from what I expected. As you guys know, being a scientist, we spend a lot of hours in the lab or sometimes years researching a topic just to have a different results, and that can be very discouraging. But don't let that deter you, because really it's the scientific journey that matters. The endurance is what matters or makes you a robust scientist. So keep at it. I think those were the challenges I had when I was coming up in my scientific career.
Okay, great. I don't know, Lauren, if you want to comment on the poll. Sorry, maybe after the next question, you can let us know what our attendees said. I know that visibility is also crucial for career growth. So, how did you increase the reach of your contribution to your research fields, Nana?
I'm going to speak from the corporate world a little bit. In the corporate world, when you talk about visibility, you always need a mentor or some type of sponsor, somebody who's done the work over several years who can guide you. And what happens is that that person can elevate you by way of showcasing and highlighting your talent. So you most likely have to support a principal scientist who, by way of knowing the industry, could also showcase and highlight your work. So visibility, in my opinion, is having a mentor, somebody who can guide you to the right relevant parties or stakeholders who can have a better understanding of your work.
Very important. Yeah, there are lessons to be learned from the corporate world. I know that it's not always easy because doing research is something. I've done research. I've researched actually in history, and then I moved to a career in the corporate world. It's two different environments, and it can be quite, intimidating at first. But I think there are some things that could be learned from the corporate world, and when applied to the science world, to say to say so, it can be very beneficial for a scientist. Lorraine, what did our attendees say to the first poll?
So I shared the results. So we have 60% said that they sometimes monitor their field of research for the latest studies and findings, and 40% said frequently. No one said rarely, so that's good. Everyone's staying on top of their the latest studies and findings.
That sounds great. Just always on that topic, we've said it's very important to stay on top of the latest developments or latest studies released. How can young researchers effectively use social media to share their work or connect with other scientists with the same interests? This question goes to both, so whoever wants to start first.
Right.
Okay.
I think I'll start
first.
Okay. Yeah, so social media, I mean, it's undeniably, the tool that has come to stay with us, and many young people are using it these days. So the involvement of scientists in the use of social media, I would say, depends very much on the area of research of the scientist. For instance, if one is working in public health, obviously, public health seeks to inform the public as much as possible, irrespective of their area of expertise or what they know. And so I would encourage young scientists in public health to be able to use it as often as they need to. However, the caution is that when you venture into dissemination information on there, the language should be tailored to the audience. The language should be such that they are easy to interpret. In fact, the information can even be made into very colorful posters and then pushed out there. But if the target is more professional, more technical, then I would advise more advanced professional networking like ResearchGate, like LinkedIn, where you are likely to network with people of your similar expertise, people who can read what you have and understand it. But either way, you have to be creative in what you put out there. Even if the topic is very technical, you can still, alter the words a little bit, but still staying quite formal so that people take you seriously. Being active on social media or on professional networking sites will also enhance your visibility, like the point that Nana made earlier. So it's quite advisable to use it, but young scientists should stay away from the tendency of getting stuck there and losing focus on what the main thing is, right?
Yes, that's right. It's true that it can take a lot of time when it should be used with caution if we can just summarize it. Nana, what do you think?
Yes, I totally agree with both of your points. I think social media you should use with caution. I do find social media to be very beneficial to making connections of people in your particular field. For example, we had an internal study here where we're looking at artificial skin layer. So we wanted to use hydrogels, and we had a 2-year window to finish the research. We went online, LinkedIn particularly, and we're able to find people who've worked with hydrogels for over 10 years, and that helped us a lot achieve our goals faster. So I do believe that social media definitely helps with bridging the gap, knowledge gap between where you are and where you want to be. So use social media cautiously. I think, for example, there clickbait, obviously, and real scientists typically, it's more than clickbait. So be careful when you go to social media.
That's right. Lorraine, maybe you want to say something because you are our social media specialist. I know that X has been has been a social media of choice for researchers. to kind of get their research out there, but also connect with other researchers like anthropologists or sociologists and all of that. But we've seen a migration from X to Blue Sky. Any comment you want to make on researchers and social media?
I think you made a good point that X has been the top choice. And yes, we have seen a migration to Blue Sky, but it hasn't been fully uptaken by X yet. Or yeah, a lot of people are still on X. So we'll have to stay tuned. But I will share the results of the poll. And out of the ones who responded, one person said that they're not on social media, but the rest said that they have a profile on general social media, which we categorized as X and LinkedIn. So yeah, there was nobody in the audience today that has a just a science focused social network or both types. So that's very interesting.
That's interesting. Maybe it's because also they haven't published yet, because I know that on platforms like ResearchGate, you can see the former publications. Edward has several ones on his profile. How long have you been using ResearchGate, Edward, and what did it bring to you?
I have used ResearchGate since 2017, thereabouts. So that's about 8 years, and it has given me lots of exposure. I have gotten colleagues reach out based on a paper that they read from me, wanting us to collaborate. I have received requests of people who wanted to read my work, and they didn't have access to it because it wasn't open access. And so I got to learn what they are doing and then shared, some of the results that I had collated. And for such connections, I would say I am also able to reach out to them, for data or for information on something that I'm working on. So I would say it has been truly rewarding to be on ResearchGate, for instance. And the good thing about ResearchGate is that it also kind of notifies you when people are reading your work, so that you can make a follow-up and see what those people are working on. And then by so doing, you sort of get a network of people that you share research ideas with. Yeah.
Let's stay on the publishing, area. We know that it's a domain. Well, it's a field that is very competitive, and getting someone's research noticed can be hard to achieve. What advice do you have for young scientists on to help them write impactful paper and choosing the right journals to publish those papers? Maybe they haven't written yet, but they'll do it in the future. So that's a question for Edward, and then Nana also can complete.
Right. So admittedly, the work that we do in science is all about letting people know about what has been done, letting people read the result that has been gotten, the conclusions that have been drawn. And so obviously being able to write a paper, being able to publish an article is like the ultimate goal, to disseminate the information that you get. And so it is quite important to do that. But to begin, it should come from the idea itself, the research questions that led you to do the work that you did to begin with. And once the research question is situated within a certain context, you are quite a distance there. And then to make the paper impactful, the way that the story is told, the way that the results that you have obtained is exposed is also very important. The language, the kind of terminology that you use in the writing, all of these things would make your paper acceptable into reputable journals, which would then reach out to your target audience. Now, once you have these things, the research questions on point, once you've been able to tell the story in the most appropriate way, then under the guidance of your mentors, they will guide you to insert certain keywords, because all of us in the scientific world, we locate our publications based on certain keywords. And so if you have these keywords, then your paper, becomes quite impactful. After the story is told, you would have to select the journal within which to publish. My practice has been to always look at the journals that return articles based on my search key terms. So if I'm getting lots of papers coming from the journal Toxins or the International Journal of Molecular Biology, for instance, then it is likely that my target audience are reading those journals or papers from those journals. So that is the first place where I would think of, writing my paper to. And once you study the writing style of those journals, it sort of informs you about how to tell your story. And that makes your paper stand a great chance of being accepted in such a journal. But let's never forget the influence that our mentors would have, in guiding us. So every time you write, you let somebody else read it, they critique it, and then you input the changes in there as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Nana, do you have something to add? I know also you have the comprehensive experience with the medical and the pharma sectors.
Yes.
What would you like to add to that to give more visibility to someone's work? Let's imagine that, I don't know, one of our young scientists work on a revolutionary device that I don't know, makes mosquito population surveillance easier or something. What do you think they should know to kind of make sure that their work gets noticed and valued also?
So I think everything Ed said, I do believe one of the primary beginning of good writing is really having that understanding of who your audience are. So it's good to know who you're writing for, who your target audience are. But really, you should have a good research question, like Ed said, to start with. And from there, knowing your audience helps. Writing, like any other scientific skill, it takes time to, develop that skill. So I do encourage you to write over and over and over again. I could tell you, at least in the corporate world, when I've written medical writing, there are times where we'll have to revise the same document, sometimes over 100 times, only because the audience have changed, right? So understand that writing is very crucial. It is something that will not leave you alone. It's here to stay with you as a scientist forever. And practicing writing at least once or twice a week will definitely help you communicate your scientific ideas and discoveries.
Okay, that makes sense. Lorraine, maybe we can launch our third and last poll. Nana, let's stay with you a moment. I know that you had experience with conferences, public speaking. Could you tell us why those are important also for scientists, especially when they are up and coming?
Yes, I think public speaking is the one of the best ways to connect with other scientists in a particular field. Is the best way to get a real-time feedback on your topic of interest. You also stand a chance to connect with other people in your industry. You can be the best scientist out there, but you have to be able to share your ideas in a convincing manner, especially to people, like policymakers and regulators who may not have the scientific acumen. So public speaking is widening my reach, at least with collaboration and also being confident about the things that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Those are great. Maybe one last question before I give the floor to the rest of the participants, because I know they are very eager to get the chance to ask you questions themselves. Nana and Edward, can you tell us more about the work you do for 100 Years of Malaria? I know that, Nana, you write books. Can you tell our audience more about those other projects that you have in addition to your work?
So 100 Years of Malaria, when we started, one of the goals we set out is to use historical data sets. So we wanted to use machine learning to have some perspective into the qualitative and quantitative historical roots of malaria. So in other words, one of our goals was to create a predictive AI model that can predict malaria outbreak in certain parts of Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, because what we realize is malaria is curable. However, it looks like sometimes access to medicine was limited. So if we're able to predict where malaria is to occur, we could maybe influence government agencies and policymakers to send drugs to those regions just so they have drugs readily available. So it's one of the AI things we're working on with 100 Years of Malaria. We're also working on a small device that is like a room air freshener that attracts mosquitoes so that the mosquitoes will not bite humans, but rather go feed on that synthetic device. So we have a lot of things we're working on, and obviously the books, but I'll have Ed speak.
Yes, Edward.
Yeah, so yeah, one of the things that we also do is to seek to publish more data, about the occurrence of malaria in these places, and then get to inform the scientific community about the potential for AI, in the fight against malaria as well. We also set up this ambassadorial program where we have ambassadors in various African countries, who act like voices, to speak to the ordinary person, the ordinary people, how to prevent malaria, how to seek help, how to recognize the symptoms of malaria, and so on and so forth. So currently we've been to Rwanda. And we are currently working on going to Ghana also to raise these awareness and raise these ambassadors to propagate the message out there.
Well, that's good because we have someone from Ghana who's today with us. I'm just gonna give the floor to Divine so that he can ask his questions. So Divine, can you introduce yourself to our guest, and then the floor is yours.
My name is Divine Agyarko. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but speak a bit louder, please.
All right. So my name is Divine Agyarko, and I was the stakeholder engagement and communications officer for Target Malaria up until January last year, and now I have joined the global team as the African engagement officer. So my question is, I live in Ghana and I see how our science students see the journey of a scientist as a very long one. They think that by the time you finish your first degree, second degree as an accountant, you get a job and you just start your life. So my question is, do you think moving out of Ghana enhance your chances of getting to where you are now? Would you advise young scientists to remain in Ghana or move out to be able to achieve their aim of becoming successful scientists? This is my question.
Right. That's a hard question, but we'll try to answer the question. I think the world is becoming a very small global marketplace, at least when it comes to scientific research. In today's world, you could order like a gene sample from India, it gets delivered at your doorstep, right? There are so many things we can do when it comes to getting access to tools to research. I do believe, however, that depending on where you are, the opportunities changes a little bit. I don't think the talent should move out of Africa. I think we need a talent in Africa because at the end of the day, we have to find the solutions for ourselves. However, other parts of the world, you will definitely have more opportunities to collaborate in different capacities, right? So, for example, I started out as a bench scientist, and now I'm working as a clinical scientist, for example, right? So there's a small shift, but we definitely need our scientists to be in Africa to help solve some of our problems.
Right. So to add to this point, Divine, I don't think that if you moved away from Ghana, or if the African scientists moved away, somebody out of Africa is going to come and experience the problems that are there and try to find the solutions for us. Okay, so whatever it is, I think that we need scientists to stay there to identify the problems that that need solutions to, begin working on it, and then if the problem requires some sort of collaboration, then that link is established, to be able to help. Like Nana said, these days, I mean, when it comes to science, lots can be done in partnership. So you can order whatever test that you want. You can even send your samples over. And so we need a talent there. We need the people, the brains, to be able to recognize the problems and initiate solving them. You can be successful when you're in Africa. You just have to make sure that your research questions are solid enough. Your research questions are situated within a certain context that attracts global attention, that attracts the network to come in and support, and you definitely are going to be fine. If you talk about experiencing what other countries have, yes, that is important. I mean, you can always, through the collaborations that you establish, spend some time in laboratories out of your home country, just to be able to experience what they have, just to be able to import some of the equipment, to be able to import some of the methodologies to enhance what you do out there as well. So the simple answer to your question is that you don't need to travel out of Africa to be able to make it as a scientist. You can do quality work in Ghana, then you can collaborate to also gain experiences out there.
Mm-hmm. I think also it's key to foster collaboration also within Africa. Recently, we've had one of the team members of Target Malaria Burkina Faso who traveled to Uganda to meet Target Malaria's team in Uganda, and those kind of exchange should be encouraged. I know that South Africa is also a huge hub for research in Africa. So yeah, that also can be another way to gain more experience, because also getting international experience is useful, and just subsequently focus on topics and issues like malaria that are really a burden for the African health systems. So the young scientists, the floor is yours. Don't be shy. I think we have a question from Stella. Stella, you can raise your hand if you want to ask the question directly, but otherwise I'm happy to ask it for you. So Stella is asking Edward if he's according to his experience, how can young upcoming scientists increase their chances of receiving funds for their work? Basically, how can they get their work funded either in the country or from abroad?
All right. Yeah. So I'll start by saying that the function of looking for funding has never been easy. I think that when I laid that preamble, then you get to understand. So it takes a lot of work, but to begin, you need to formulate very important research questions that have the tendency to solve problems. Once you have such research questions, once you build a work plan to solve it, and you set out to look for funding, the funding agencies are so many. Okay, so through the networks that you build, through the readings that you do, through the search that you do, you can find multiple funding agencies that are always looking for, quite sensitive projects to fund. And then once you locate them, you then have to come up with a good story. So the write-up that you have made should meet certain prerequisites. And once you do, the chances of getting your project or your research funded increases very astronomically. Another thing that I would advise is that once you have the projects, in mind, involve experienced, scientists to critique it, to be part of it. Once they are part of this idea, they can also point you in the right direction. And when these funding agencies see that the project is being done in collaboration with other experienced people, they are more likely to, come to your aid. They are more likely to put money in there, knowing very well that the project is in good hands, knowing very well that, the project will be seen through. So in summary, I would say that get a good research question, get a good write-up, and then involve some experienced scientists in there, and you are very likely to get your projects funded.
Nana, anything you want to add to that?
I think Ed said it very well. I think grant writing is one of the writing skills you have to pick up as a scientist, and be very careful about the requirements for the grant, right? There's some grants require you to write in a specific format, but everything Edward said, I agree with, and with that, you should be able to get some funding.
Okay, sounds good. Well, while other questions come, I have another question for both of you. Looking back on your experience, what are some key habits or skills that have helped you become a successful scientist? And what advice can you give to aspiring researchers that you haven't given already? But what other things that we haven't covered today would you like to share?
I think for me, number one is patience. Science is being patient. Go in with the passion or with the idea of discovery, not having a solution in your head. Patience is definitely a key part of becoming a scientist. But more importantly, in the modern world, you have to pick up new skills. You don't have to be an expert in those new skills, but you definitely have to pick up new skills. So, for example, coding. I did 7 years of stats, but then I had to learn how to code because I realized it was necessary to do protein engineering, bioinformatics, for example. I had to learn a new way to write, right? So I used to write as a technical scientist, then as a medical scientist, and then regulatory scientist. So writing is always learning new things definitely helps. I think these two things. So always allow yourself to grow, not specifically in your specific domain, but also things that can enhance your work.
Right. So in the line of what Nana said, I would also encourage the spirit of perseverance. While you're patient, you must learn to persevere. I mean, because sometimes you get hit with unexpected results. I mean, talk about grant writing and seeking for funding. You're going to get several rejections. So you must learn to persevere and keep going at it. Again, I would say consistency should be with a young scientist all the time. Consistency in reading, consistency in writing. Writing never comes to any of us easily. I mean, you ask those who have written tons of books, and they'll tell you that every time that they have to sit down and write, they encounter a new kind of inertia. So you have to be consistent about it. You have to keep going. So personally, since my days of lecturing, I have always dedicated one day of the week to write. It could be just writing one paragraph of a book chapter that I'm working on or of a paper that I'm targeting. But that one day, I sit continuously with very minimal distractions, so that I can focus on what it is that I want to put down. And then also consistency with reading. Reading scientific articles can be difficult, from the beginning, but with consistency, you are able to overcome all the inertia that it comes with. So you can also practice reading one paper a day. Some of the papers are quite long. And so if you're not able to finish it, at least read the title, read the abstract, and read the key points in that article. These days, with the advent of AI, it's quite easy to go through scientific papers, interacting with the paper through these AI tools. So like Nana said, don't keep yourself back. I mean, inform yourself, learn new skills, learn how to use these AI tools, learn how to use new technology, and you do great as a scientist.
That sounds good. Lorraine, I would like for you to share the results of our last poll, and then we can switch to Chris' question, which is kind of related. So we've asked if the young scientists participated in networking events, if they participate regularly or not. So I think most of the time, most of the people do go to networking events 2 to 3 times in the past year, but not more than that, and not less either. So that helps me switch to Chris. Chris is a communications assistant of Target Malaria Uganda. I'm just gonna maybe enable his microphone so he can ask his question himself. I'll give you the floor, Chris. Just 1 minute. The floor is yours, Chris, so you can ask your question directly.
I was inquiring which kind of networking events, some examples of networking events that young scientists can be part of.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's asking which kind of events they could attend, either in their country. Maybe you can tell us more about the kind of events you used to go to, Edward, while you were in Ghana. And Nana, I also know that you do travel a lot. So the floor is yours. Maybe first Nana and then Edward.
Sure. So I am part of the New York Academy of Sciences, and the New York Academy of Sciences have a breadth of scientific symposiums that they do every month, and I always attend depending on my interest. But yeah, I think there are so many professional organizations you can join, and some of these networking events are virtual, so you don't have to be in person. So you could, for example, join a scientific organization, let's say in France and England, in the US, and then align yourself to the specific event that interests you.
Right. I think that Chris, being a member of the Young Scientist Network is a good place to start. And having a taste of these series of webinars is also quite good. I don't know if, Chris, you are still a student, but when I was a student, I joined the Science Students Association, and within that association, we organized conferences. You would call it a small or a mini kind of conference, but that is what exposed me very early on to attending these programs and getting to interact with people. Then I moved on from there to the Ghana Science Association. Okay, so that's also local, and within that group, they also organized various conferences, at local levels, at various campus levels, and then at national levels. So you can begin from such mini or minor kind of gatherings and participate, and never be too shy to submit an abstract or to submit, a conference paper to such things. And when you have the chance to even present, you have to start from there. Once it's small, you kind of build your capacity, and then you take it from there to a larger world. So always look around you. Based on the network that you have, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on ResearchGate, if you're on various scientific communities, look out for such, events. And then, like Nana said, most of these things are online. So you don't have to, spend money traveling or anything. You just get some internet data, you join, and then you see how it goes. All right. And then as you grow in science, you can then participate, fully. But having mentors would also help. They can also point you in the right direction. Whoever it is that you are working under or you are working with, have conversations with them, and they can guide you to attend these things.
I think it was maybe much harder years before, but after COVID now we have all these online events. Sometimes also that's when being on a social network, on a social media is helpful, because you can just find an event that can interest you. I know that I have attended online events on gender studies and I'm not specialized on the field, but it's a topic of interest for me, so I just joined it and it was really very insightful. I have a question from Stella, and then I'll give the floor to Lorraine, who also have a question. So Stella is asking Nana, how do you find it shifting from a bench scientist to corporate? How did the transition go?
So yeah, I've shifted a lot in my career, but really the core of my career is still a scientist. Even when I was in academia, I shifted from chemistry to biotechnology to absorption chemistry again. And one of the interesting things in this journey is I research with selenium, for example. So I research with selenium in all three capacities: in cell culture studies, in protein engineering, and absorption chemistry. I think really the shift really stems down to what you're passionate about. I think what I'm passionate about is working in something that could make medicine accessible to the less fortunate. So all of my choices have been guided by this notion. So from academia, I went into corporate, and I specifically work in women's healthcare, pediatric medicine, and cardiovascular health, and all with the intent of contributing to something that can make healthcare accessible to the less fortunate, and less fortunate meaning sub-Saharan Africa.
Mhm. Thank you. Lorraine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Edward, you mentioned having the right mentors. So I wanted to find out, how can a young scientist find the right mentor? Yeah, and then I'll go on to my second question after.
Okay. So to begin, one will have to look within their circles. So if, for instance, you are working with a university right now, there must be a senior lecturer, there must be an associate professor, a professor, that is working closely in your department. Go to them, talk to them. If their research area interests you, go and talk to them, establish that connection. That's the closest, circle that you can find. If you are working in a research organization, whoever is the lead for that research team, if you truly have the passion in that research area, go talk to them and then, establish that interest in what they do. Otherwise, then you can go on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is open to anybody and everybody. So based on your interest, they have these embedded AI tools that sort of, based on your experiences, they even recommend people to you. So request to be their network, once they respond, start the interaction from there, start reading their work. And through that, you're going to get this circle, through which you interact with. You follow them, you read their posts, you follow what they like, and gradually you build your circles. Some of them become close enough because their work interests you. Then you can talk to them about, the possibility of mentoring you, and you take it from there.
Great. And my second question goes back to being a 100 Years of Malaria ambassador. Is that something we can get involved with? How can we connect with 100 Years of Malaria?
Of course, the goal is to get the message out there. So, in fact, that is one of the important objectives that our interaction with Target Malaria is about. So I guess Nana can shed more light on that. But yes, that is something that we can involve the young scientists, especially those in Africa, to help us propagate the message. So yeah.
Yes, and I do believe we're headed back to Rwanda in May of this year, where we're going to be going back to the hospitals and the classrooms. So feel free to volunteer. And I think Connor can share more on this topic. But yeah, we are more than happy to collaborate in any capacity. If you ever want to collaborate or help spread the word in your own capacity, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to connect you with the right person who can work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So which countries does it operate in, just to have a clear view? Because we have East Africa, West Africa, and there are a lot of countries in Africa. So can you tell us more about where you have been able to work so far?
So far, Rwanda, because Rwanda is, there are 12 regions, is very easy to work through, and we have such strong support in Rwanda. The data we're looking for is very accessible, and our primary, I guess our flagship will be Rwanda. Expanding to Ghana and Nigeria very soon, and then hopefully Benin. But Benin obviously have the language barrier for us, the French language barrier. But yes.
That sounds great. We'll make sure to share with you Divine contacts, because he's Target Malaria's representative in Ghana for now, and maybe Uganda, because I think it's not very far from Rwanda. Burkina Faso might be a bit far for you for now, but who knows what the future holds.
Sure.
Any other question just before we wrap up, because we only have 2 or 3 times left, 2 or 3 minutes left, sorry. Anything that you want to add, Nana or Edward, that you didn't get the opportunity to say during this exchange?
I think one of the things, I just wanted to make a small comment on the mentorship question. I think you will know when you have a right mentor, when the right mentor can separate the science versus your expectations, meaning the personal relation. Most often than not, the right mentor always says no to you, to your ideas, not because they don't necessarily want to support you, but they want to challenge you to go further than where you are. So look out for that. Just because a mentor says no to you doesn't mean they don't believe in you or they don't want to support you. It's just part of the science. It's just part of the growth. And you just have to remind yourself that mentorship is not about positive yes all the way through. It's about a lot of no's. I can tell you a lot of my former bosses and mentors all said no to me till the very end when I stopped working with them. But in retrospect, these were the best ideas they gave me in my career. So I encourage you to keep that in mind.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm just gonna share with you, Edward. You can go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Edward.
Right. Yeah. So just the point I wanted to make is that sometimes when you think about science and the area that you want to venture into, you can start having these huge ideas, that you feel you must achieve before you can actually be successful. But that in a way can limit you. It can be a stumbling block. So what I would encourage colleagues to do is you can think small also. You can think small within a broader, framework, and that way your objectives are more achievable. So when you approach mentors, when you approach funding agencies, they are more likely to give you the funding to achieve those bite-sized objectives rather than go with a huge, objective that they know is going to take several years to achieve. That can slow you down. It can block you from progressing. So you can start small and then you walk through the objectives.
That's a great advice. I've just shared in the chat for all the participants the link to 100 Years of Malaria page on Instagram. So feel free to connect to that page, and so you can, follow updates of Nana, Edward, and the rest of the team. I wanted to take the time to really thank you for this very rich exchange and this very great webinar. It was really a pleasure to discuss breadth of topics and your individual experience. We really appreciate you taking the time of your schedule to come and give career tips and advice to our young scientists.
It was a pleasure.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
hope to do that in the future as well. So thank you all, and see you in the next month for the third edition of the Young Scientists webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.